A lot of voters are looking for some clarification on the exact position their elected officials have on abortion now that the Supreme Court has overturned Roe versus Wade. Mr. Smith, let's start with you. You've said that the Supreme Court has now returned this issue to the states, but Congress could still take action. If a vote came to the Senate floor to ban abortion at 6 weeks, would you vote for it?
Well, I appreciate the question. Look, I am pro-life. And I'm proud of my pro-life record. As I mentioned, while I was in the New Hampshire House, I was named the pro-life House Member of the Year. Look, as a United States Senator, I'd have to look at all legislation carefully, and I'm not going to make comments on any hypothetical pieces of legislation. I do believe the Supreme Court got this decision right with the Dobbs decision in sending this matter back to the states so that the people, through their legislators, can have a say in this matter, and New Hampshire can handle it the New Hampshire way. Here's what I don't agree with, though, and that is Maggie Hassan's extreme and radical position on this issue. Maggie Hassan's position, and she has voted on this, is she believes in abortion through 9 months with no limitations and no restrictions at the taxpayer expense. Even most pro-choice Granite Staters don't have a position that extreme, and I believe that's vastly out of touch with most people in New Hampshire.
Senator Morse, before the Supreme Court announced its decision, you said if you were in the U.S. Senate, you would bring New Hampshire's 24-week abortion ban to Washington. But now you're saying this is strictly a state issue. So please, let's make it clear right here tonight. Are you saying you would vote no on any federal abortion legislation based on your belief that it's a state issue?
Well, I think you got it right, Jean, the way you phrased the question. Before they acted in Washington in the courts, I would have supported Washington making a decision. Now that the courts have acted, I think that we should legislate this in the states. And that's exactly what we did here in New Hampshire. We banned abortion in New Hampshire in the 7th, the 8th, and the 9th month. And we made it perfectly clear that you couldn't use taxpayer dollars in New Hampshire to pay for abortions. That's where we should be. We shouldn't be going and doing what Maggie Hassan is saying, and abortions can happen on demand, and they'll be paid for with your tax dollars, and we're going to take parents out of the equation. That's wrong for this state.
To you now, Mr. Fenton, you have strong libertarian values. Do you think the government should be involved in regulating abortion at all on either a state or a federal level? And can you tell us why or why not?
Yeah, that's a great question. Definitely not at the federal level. I'm running for federal office, and I think we should reduce government involvement at a federal level in everything. So I would vote no on any abortion laws at a federal level, any kind of ban or anything like that. And I think this is a very divisive wedge issue that's used a lot, and a lot of people feel like they're going to lose rights from it. I personally don't want to take anybody's rights. I want government out of your life, and I don't want people to feel that they should be afraid that we're going to take their rights. I personally don't want to take people's rights. I want people to have their own freedoms and make their own individual choices with their doctor and themselves. I don't want government involved.
Mr. Moncharmani, you believe states should have the right to govern policy. Is it fair to women that one state is allowed to make such a consequential procedure illegal while another state allows it?
Sure. So first of all, let me begin by saying I do think the New Hampshire policy is the correct policy, that we should have a situation, and I agree with Senator Chuck Morse that we should allow choice as he has provided in the first 6 months, and then a ban thereafter. That is a sound policy. This is an issue that is so divisive across America, and I would tell you it's divisive among politicians, not among the population. Most of the Granite State families I've talked to, the Granite State women and Granite State families in total, suggest that they agree with the policy we have here in New Hampshire. Now, when it comes to federal legislation thereof, I would be comfortable if federal legislation was about to impose a difference on New Hampshire families. I would protect New Hampshire's perspective. So I am happy to protect, even if it does require at the federal level, the protection of the New Hampshire law. The New Hampshire law is an appropriate law. It's one that meets the needs of most of the families. It's not perfect, but it's good, and it actually moves the country forward.
And General Bolduc, you too have said that this should be up to the states to decide. But as someone strongly pro-life, like you said, would you like to see abortion banned in all 50 states?
Listen, I want to protect life from the beginning to the end. I think that's what our health care system is all about, and that's what I think we should be all about. But that's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about here is the extremism of Maggie Hassan, right? There is a solid New Hampshire law here. There's a solid New Hampshire law that allows a choice up to 6 months. And then after that, it forbids it except for the health of the mother if anything should emerge. That's what a majority of Granite Staters want. That is what Granite Staters want. And she serves Granite Staters. And you know what? I never hear anybody ask her what she would do to concede in any way on this issue. All she does is throw fire or throw fuel on the fire. All she does is create discontent, which results in violence, which results in vandalism, which results in people not getting along and hating each other. That's not a leader. We don't need her as a United States Senator. It's not right, and that's why I'm running.